Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Outgrow's Marketer of the Month. I'm your host, Dr. Saksham Sharda. I'm the creative director at outgrow.co. And for this month, we're going to interview Drew Neisser, who is the founder and CEO of Renegade, the savvy B2B marketing agency that's been helping CMOs to cut through since 1996. Thanks for joining us, Drew.
Thanks for having me. I love your show.
So, Drew, we're going to start with a rapid fire round just to break the ice. You get 3 passes. In case you don't want to answer the question, you can just say pass, but try to keep your answers to one word or one sentence only. Okay?
You got it.
All right. So, the first one, at what age do you want to retire?
Never.
What is something that people often get wrong about you?
That I'm really relaxed.
How long does it take you to get ready in the mornings?
In 16 minutes.
Most embarrassing moment of your life?
Jumping from a boat to a dock, but I missed the dock and fell in and then had to change my clothes that night and left underwear in a bush.
Okay, that was very detailed, I see. Fill in the blank. An upcoming marketing trend is blank.
An upcoming marketing trend is VCs and PEs discovering that brand matters.
The city in which the best kiss of your life happened.
New York City.
Okay, pick one, Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey.
Jack Dorsey, 2 jobs, 8 hours a day each. Come on, give me a break.
The first movie that comes to your mind when I say the word ambition.
Benjamin Franklin documentary.
Oh, I haven't seen that, but I'm going to. Okay. When did you last cry and why?
I cry all the time. The last time was probably the movie Coda.
I haven't seen it, but it just won the Oscar, right?
Brilliant movie and just really sweet.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
Don't put all your eggs in one giant client basket.
The biggest mistake of your career?
Probably the same. Putting all the eggs in the one client basket. 70% of our business was from one client. No matter what I tried to do, it kept happening.
How do you relax?
Lots of sports. Play racket sports mainly.
A habit of yours that you hate?
Checking email more than 3 times a day.
The most valuable skill you've learned in life?
How to respond to a crisis.
Okay. And the last question, your favorite Netflix show?
During the pandemic, my wife and I decided we couldn't go anywhere, so we used Netflix as our travel show. So all the international shows, we went to Paris with Call My Agent, with Spain with Money Heist, Israel with Fada, and just I could keep going.
Okay, fair. Well, that's the end of the rapid fire round. And now we go to the longer questions, and I'm interested in how you actually respond to a crisis. Tell us more about that.
So I've had several in my career, and I think it sort of speaks to a sense of resilience. I'll give you an example. In 2020, when the pandemic began, I wasn't sure, what's going to happen to our agency? We've been through these before, and so my habit now is just assume it's worse for everyone else. And so I started reaching out to chief marketing officers in March. And by April, we started something called CMO Huddles. And now it's a business that's as big as Renegade. And sort of this is one of the reasons why I don't need to retire, is that I can keep doing this for a long time.
So your approach to a crisis is to understand that everyone has a crisis, and that kind of normalizes it in a sense.
Yeah. So the key is just to sort of get out of yourself and sort of say, okay, I don't know what's going to happen to us, but I do know that I can help other people. And that was sort of when I started reaching out to CMOs and said, how are you doing? And I said, well, my God, we're having to deal with the office shutdown. We don't have ability to run our business remotely. We don't know if our customers are going to pay. So we just started troubleshooting all of those issues. And by bringing a group of people together, we met actually 55 times over a 4-month, 5-month period. There were so many issues to sort of address. And it just reminded me, I mean, similarly, I learned that after 9/11 and learned that after several other things, that when you start to see and you really things are bad, it's just going to be worse for other people. And if you focus on helping, you're probably going to come out of it okay. And you won't know where you're going to come out of it, but you'll come out of it.
Okay. And how did you like come up with the idea of starting CMO Huddles anyway? Was it from this crisis thing, or was there other factors involved in starting something like this?
Yeah, there were other factors, and you're quite perceptive. So, a good friend of mine, Pete Kranick, had founded the CMO Club. Our agency had actually done the logo. I'd been part of it for 12 years. Well, on March 2nd, 2020, he sold it to Salesforce, and that just felt like to me weird, for one, and two, knowing all the CMOs, I thought, particularly B2B CMOs, could probably use a different kind of help that then the club was prepared to offer them. And so I just saw a window as well. And even we went into sort of, we'll call it a beta test, although I didn't really know it was a beta test. It was like, I think I can help folks. Let's call it CMO Huddles. Let's see where it goes. And about 3 months into it, the CMOs were saying, Drew, this is a big idea. This is how you should structure it. This is how and the various services that you should provide. And they really provided the guidance to get us so by October 1st, we could launch it as a business in 2020.
Okay. And how has Renegade's mission changed over the years since you founded it in 1993? And how does like CMO Huddles kind of play into that?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we've always had this logo of a saw, and our mission or purpose, if you will, has always been about cutting through. How you cut through has changed a lot. We started as a guerrilla marketing agency and helped a lot of giant firms figure out different ways of engaging and creating sort of unique brand experiences. And that was really good until 2008, when the economy crashed and people just stopped spending money on experiential marketing. So we made a major pivot, and we were doing something called social media before it was called social media. So we said, all right, we're going all in on that. And that was pretty good for a few years, and then realized, well, social is really part of content. Content's bigger. We want to keep moving towards the front of the brand. And ultimately, where we are today is, the real way to cut through is strategically and focus on strategy and brand. And so we've moved from this experiential guerrilla firm to a sort of leading edge strategy firm, kind of with an evolution of the market, all with the same goal. We're still trying to help marketers cut through, but we become a lot more focused in terms of the deliverables. And CMO Huddles fuels Renegade in that, we keep getting smarter about the challenges that CMOs face. I think we've done over now literally hundreds of huddles with hundreds of CMOs, and that just keeps informing our practice.
So the flexibility, I guess, that Renegade has embraced over the years with its changing nature is something that might also, I guess, at times lead to a crisis if you back the wrong trend at some point. And then how do you handle that?
Yeah, it's true. And again, this is sort of that moment where I talked about earlier, the ability to sort of respond to a crisis and pivot if needed. I mean, in 2008, what happened was, first of all, I started Renegade with Dentsu. We had a big parent company, and we started to get Panasonic business. That was our main reason for being with Dentsu. We grew that business up. It was we were their second largest vendor. And then it was clear they were going to be leaving over a certain period of time for a number of reasons. And it was 70% of our business. And I couldn't write a business plan based on losing that account. So I went to Dentsu and said, I don't know what's going to happen with Renegade, but I'd rather go it alone. Why don't you give me some, let me buy you out, so to speak, and let's see what happens. And, we really had a very tough time in 2008, but we had to jettison a lot of businesses. And ultimately what saved us was focus at that point, is getting rid of some of the businesses and just focusing on social and content. And that led to me starting to interview CMOs. And I've interviewed over 500 now. And that's been a continuous source of learning and knowledge and ability to sort of stay what's on their minds, how to pivot, help, led to writing 2 books. And anyway, all of it comes back to, when you get to a crisis, figure out, how you can make a difference, how you can help.
And do you think this pivoting is something that's going to exponentially increase as we enter a much more faster paced marketing sphere in the future? Because like I assume everything is increasing exponentially. So the next thing would be the next leaders would be who can really pivot really fast to trends that
Yeah,
change. I don't know.
I'm of two minds of this, because I honestly, I think that, if I were advising an agency right now, I would, where would you want to be? And, you really want to try to find a place where you're the best at some kind of vertical and horizontal axis, right? The type of business that you're, the services that you provide in the industries you serve, and you find an intersection there where you own it. Like you're the best content agency for healthcare, for example. I mean, that's a positioning, and it's likely that's a 10-year, 15-year run. You don't want to get like, if you were just an agency that, for example, we just do 6 Sense implementations for healthcare, that'd be a problem because that technology could go away. So, you want to give yourself focus, ideally as an agency, vertical and horizontal, but not so narrow that it could be gone in 5 years.
And could you give us an example of someone who's managed to do that a little according to what you say?
It's hard. I mean, I think if you look at healthcare agencies in general, and I mentioned they've been doing very well. I mean, because that's a segment that just keeps growing and growing. And I now know that I can't name them, but there are healthcare agencies that just do social, or healthcare agencies that just do digital. I'm less inclined to sort of worry about the services that you provide as opposed to for whom you provide them, because that's where the expertise lies, is in the industries.
So, well, we read your blog series about CATS, Courageous, Artful, Thoughtful, Scientific Framework on your website. Would you like to talk more about that? Tell us about CATS.
Sure. So this came out of after I wrote my first book, which was called The CMO's Periodic Table, and it featured 64 interviews with chief marketing officers. People started asking me, Drew, so I can't get to 64. Break it down. What are the traits of the most successful CMOs? And so I started thinking about that and came up with CATS, which stands for Courageous, Artful, Thoughtful, and Scientific. And then as I got to my second book, it actually became the framework for the whole book. And it's a framework that I road tested with CMOs for a couple of years. The blog post that you saw was a precursor to the book. And if you follow that thing, if you don't have a great strategy, and like if you don't dare to be distinct, forget about execution. So you're only going to be as good as your strategy. And I'm afraid that we did some research, and this is why I wrote the book, is that B2B marketing had gotten ridiculously complicated, but not more effective. And you start to boil that down and you say, well, why isn't it more effective? And you ask CMOs, okay, what is your product or service distinct in the marketplace? And 60% say, yeah. Well, and then we say, is your marketing distinct? 40% said, yeah. And you said, wait, that's a huge gap. That's just wrong. That's just patently wrong. It is the job of the marketer to help differentiate, distinguish, or create a unique brand. So that takes courage. And that's it, when you have the courage to say, no, we can't say that and that and that. When you have the courage to say, we're going to be a color that isn't everybody else's color, when you have the courage to say, we're going to talk differently internally and externally, we're going to be different, ideally we're going to be unique, that takes courage. And not every marketer has the courage to butt against sometimes the CEO, sometimes the board of directors, sometimes others who are just saying, demand, 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 just buy another Google ad. So that's courage. Then we can get to artful. I'm happy to keep going or pause.
Yes, please do.
Okay. So great. So you have the courage to create this unique positioning, right? Now you've got to artfully, and one of the interesting things about being a chief marketing officer is you can't do it alone. I mean, you can't even try to do it alone. You could come up day one, walk in there with a brilliant idea, and it won't happen, because you have to build this sort of collective understanding of the company. And so the first thing I recommend to CMOs to do, and I have it in the book, is do a employee survey. It's so easy. It's so basic. And just sort of ask them, are they proud of working at the company? Would they recommend the company? And ask them for 4 words to describe the brand. And it's amazing what they deliver. And then you can say, hey, thank you for your input, wherever you end up with your unique strategy. So artfulness is not just a creative ability to think about design and words. Those are important. It's also an artfulness in being able to bring the organization together around a common purpose. And that's, again, takes the courage to have an interesting, distinctive one, and then it takes artfulness to rally everybody around it. And that's good. Those two things are really good building blocks. Agencies love those two because agencies deliver courage and artfulness in their sleep. The next part, I think it makes it kind of interesting, is thoughtfulness, in that we live in this give to get economy where if you do stuff, if you deliver value in every single thing, if marketing is an exchange of value, then chances are you're really going to be helpful and considered. And this is more important than ever now that, people are doing their own journeys. They're buying without any interaction with a salesperson, even in B2B. And so thoughtfulness is key. And but what I mean by that is, what could you do for a prospect or a customer or an employee that will help them in their life, whether it's their work life or their home life? Okay. All of those things are good, really good, and can go really far, but you still lose if you don't have the scientific method, if you don't have some metrics to back you up. And so in the last 3 chapters of the book, I talk about this, measure what matters, because most of them have too many metrics, but they don't have employee, customer, prospect, and brand metrics. Automate attentively. Basically, in B2B, the tech stacks are taking up 20, 25% of budget. That's a joke to me. Get it down to 10. And then lastly, the best part of our business is an opportunity to experiment. So we talk about testing to triumph. And I love that, as that's where, if you can build a culture of experimentation as a chief marketing officer, you could become the CEO of the company.
And where did you get the ideas for all of this from? So what were the inspirational source material for writing about cats?
So almost all of it are the interviews that I've been doing. And I mentioned in 2008, when we made that pivot, I said, okay, we're going to be experts in social and content. And to do that, we're going to be practitioners. And I said, I'm going to write an article every week. Well, you can't write an article every week unless you have a source material for that. So because I'm just not that creative. So I started interviewing CMOs, and I'm now well over 500. So and I look at every interview that I do as a case history. And so I didn't know that when I was doing an interview, 3 years ago with Jeff Perkins about what he was doing at Park Mobile, that was going to become part of the book under the, experimentation and building a culture of experimentation. But it was great that I had done that interview, because I was doing all the homework. I just wasn't sure where it was going to apply.
And what is the count with the 1 article per week? Is it still 1 article per week, or have you increased, or how do you get yourself to write in the first place?
Okay, so first I committed to it, and then I did it. And it used to take me 4 hours, and that was all I would give myself to write a 1,000-word article. That was what I gave myself to do. Now then I did that for 1 year for sure, 52 articles that the first year. Now it's probably fewer, because my podcast sort of produces articles really easily, because we take the podcast, we shorten it down to a Q&A. A shorter version of it goes into Ad Age, and we're doing 2 of those. I mean, maybe I'm doing 1 or 2 a month now. For a while, it was yeah. I've got a podcast, I've got a live streaming show, we've got Renegade, and we've got CMO Huddles. Something has to give.
Okay. So how do you determine how valuable the content or any content is to the client's time? When do you know it's good enough, for example?
I love the question, and I'm going to turn it around, because there's no shortage of content, right? There's so much content out there. And so to me, what's happened you hear this expression, digital fatigue, in that sort of creeped in, and people started calling it Zoom fatigue. Then they realized, no, this is bigger. We're just tired of being online. So the bar for quality content went up. And so the way I look at it, every piece of content that I produce or we produce is meant for a very singular audience of chief marketing officers. Will they get value out of it? And if they won't get value out of it, if I don't think they will, then we won't run it. And similarly, for anybody creating content, if you know your target audience, but I always say, like, would you send this to your CEO? Would you have them read this? Because if they would find value out of it, then chances are the rest of your target will. So you just have to raise the bar, I think, now, because there is so much content. And I look at our shows and constantly questioning, and this is why you have to do homework before you do the interview. And everybody I talk to, I don't do a podcast with, because I don't think there's a story that's going to be distinctive enough, or that I'll be able to suck out and say, okay, here's 3 things that I learned from this episode.
And how do you think, could you tell us more talk about customers, if at all? Do they have a role in marketing?
Oh my God, yes, of course they do. I mean, yeah, they are everything. And there's no doubt there's a partnership. I mean, the best work that we've done over the years, for the most part, I would say 9 out of 10 times, is with the best clients, the ones who sort of understood their role, your role, but could push you to say, well, that's pretty good, but can you do better? And, I like this, but I don't like this. And have you talked to, show this to another one of our customers and get some input on it. So I totally welcome and with a long career in marketing, it's like, there, as the old saying goes, clients get the work that they deserve. And we've worked with some just amazing clients who really do push us in the right way.
And what's some of the best business advice you've ever gotten from a client or from someone? I don't know.
And part of it is something that I probably not always listen, but anytime anybody said focus, I would pause. And this is just part of me being kind of interested in lots of things and being a little ADD, as I often forget to focus. So that's probably always been the best advice anybody's ever said. You're doing too much. As an agency, you might be doing too much, or individually, you might be trying to do too much. So focus is your friend.
And what, I guess, this is something that has come up in our podcast quite a lot, that a little bit of attention deficiency kind of helps in this world, is this internet of clickbaiting and everything. What do you think about that?
Have you talked to
I know
Peter
you said it's a
Shankman?
liability, but do you also think it's the opposite of a liability sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with, so Peter Shankman has done a whole thing on this, and how ADHD really made a huge difference in his life, and how he was able to, and I think I actually interviewed him, and I saw what his situation. It's far worse than mine. The answer is yes, in that when I do actually focus on something, I get lost, and I have to apologize for being late to meetings all the time, because that happens to me. But I'm only apologizing slightly, because when I get in a zone, I'm in it and I'm accomplishing something and feeling really good about it. So if I'm 10 minutes late to, now, hopefully it's not for a podcast interview where a CMO is waiting for me, but so there is the good side of it. The bad side of it is that you're checking your email too many times. The bad side of it is that, look, squirrel, you get distracted. And again, if the opposite of focus is distraction, that's the battle that I think we all face to one degree or another.
So speaking of really getting into something and enjoying it, tell us the question is business accomplishment, but I'm just going to say biggest accomplishment this year. It doesn't have to be business related. It could be a meeting you went into and you really liked it. I don't know.
Biggest accomplishment. Well, probably, we just surpassed 100 subscribers at CMO Huddles, which was a milestone of ours, and an exciting moment that sort of both was kind of proof of concept and proof that we had something really exciting going here. So that I would say that was probably the bell ringer so far this year.
Okay, well, congratulations. And we saw your mascot, Louis, on Renegade's leadership team. Clearly, he's doing a great job. What would you like to say to your canine readership?
Oh my gosh, yes, it's funny. He's right here, right now, sleeping just beside me, coaching me along the way. It's a dog eat dog world, but be good and seek out those treats.
So what's with cats and dogs?
Look, I'm an animal lover. It's what can I tell you?
Okay.
But what's funny about it is, look, we love our animals, right? And there's a certain way of, if you can get people to see things in things that they like and appreciate, it's just that much more memorable, right? And then so the cats thing is, it's like, what? Wait, what? It's a little bit, why are you talking about marketing theory and cats? And to me, that's sort of part of the story.
Yeah, I think Product Hunt's entire marketing is around cats. Like if you go to their website, it's like cats everywhere. But so really the question then is, Drew, are you a cat person or a dog person?
I'm both. I don't see why you need to have a choice. We had both for years.
We should have put that in the rapid fire round and made you pick one, and then there'd be like a PR disaster somewhere. Okay. Are there any mistakes you've made that you don't want any other marketers to make?
Oh God, I've made so many mistakes. I'm really tired of making mistakes. Yeah, let's see. We fired 2 multinational clients within a 3-month period. I think probably we should have only fired one of them or spaced it out a little bit. That would be one. We were just a little too quick to say, yeah, I don't think there's a culture match here. And again, I think there probably were times where we maybe underinvested in certain opportunities as they were coming up. And yeah, and I would say that a mistake, if you really want to grow your company fast, is sometimes I think I probably wasn't as tough as I could have, should have been. And that, again, it depends on where you want to end up.
And so when you fired the 2 clients, I guess there was a crisis situation, but you know how to deal with those after having.
Look, I mean, you're only as good as your clients.
Mhm.
And if you have clients that are really wearing your team down and you're not making any money on them, no matter how good the brand name or frankly, how good the work that you are doing for them is, you're going to something's going to break, right? Because why are you doing work for a client that you're not making any money on? And 2, why are your employees miserable working on that client? You either have to fix the relationship and confront the client on it, or you do have to walk away. And it's just painful when you do it, because you should have a plan B, right? Well, okay, well, maybe you do it when you win another client, right? You just plan it out. Don't just get rid of it when it's like, you've got the 10th complaint about how the client treated one employee or another.
Mm. Actually, I was actually listening to one of your podcasts in which you were talking about, or I think your guest was talking about how small and medium businesses have an advantage that they can have 24/7 customer support as compared to enterprises who would really get drowned if they offered 24/7 customer support. So how do you think small and medium businesses should go about interacting with clients? Like what should be the something and advice about it?
Well, so it's so interesting because I'm listening to, what's the book? It's called Free Time. And I'm fascinated by this notion that a small business, particularly one where you own the company yourself, that you can set up a company that works for you. And in other words, and you could say, we don't do customer service on the weekends, right? You could do that as a small business and would say, but here's how we have an online something or other to do it. So I feel like small business gives you an advantage in a lot of ways, in that you can define the parameters, whereas a large business and a medium-sized business, the marketplace kind of defines it, right? And you can make that part of your personality. It's just harder with bigger businesses, because if everybody has 24/7 customer support and you don't, that's a problem. I mean, imagine an airline that didn't have 24/7 customer support. Yeah, that would be bad, right? So anyway, I think the interesting part of being an entrepreneur right now is not necessarily saying, gee, I want to get from 5 people to 1,000 people, but how do I create a 5-10 person company that every employee is getting it's really feeling good about their contribution, and maybe they're only working 4 days a week.
Hmm. And the last question is, what would you be doing if not this?
Well, my third book is going to be on Benjamin Franklin, but it from a very funky angle. And I would love to be talking to 7th graders about this remarkable human being, both strengths and weaknesses, because he was really a true human being. I mean, he had lots of flaws, and sort of get them excited about the possibility of what one individual could accomplish in their lifetime. And that would probably be me.
So you're writing the next Hamilton.
Well, kind of, but also more importantly than writing it is just that gives me permission to go to classrooms and talk about this individual in a way that, frankly, I don't even think the documentary that I'm watching on Burns really gets at, which is because he accomplished so much, but the inspiration that is there to be found in his story is, I think, might be a little lost right now in that documentary. And I think we need inspiration right now.
And earlier you said you were listening to a book about something. So you're listening to books. So you're doing audiobooks a lot.
I do. I listen to a lot of books. Yeah. And right now and it could be an age thing, but I'm obsessed with, well, part of it's not just that. For one of the things I know about CMOs is that they're all time constrained. Most of us are time constrained. So I'm really been focused lately on how do we be more effective without spending more time, right? Sort of changing this formula. So this is the third book that I've listened to in the last month on time management, energy management, and finding ways of getting things done without putting in 90 hours a week.
And where do you go on a hunt for these books?
So they usually come recommended, or it sort of becomes a series. Like I'll be listening to one and they'll recommend another, or I'll talk to someone about it. And so, I was talking to someone at Franklin Covey, for example. They're an expert in this area, and they recommended a book that I read. So, that's the book I listened to, and then discovered this other one because Dory Clark mentioned it.
And the last question is, you said you're going to have a 10-minute coffee break after this. So do you actually just drink coffee for 10 minutes doing absolutely nothing? Is that like a meditative thing?
No. So Renegade, and we went virtual pretty much right away, and have no plans to go back to physical offices. But one of the ways that we stay together is that, and we used to do this twice a week, but now we do it once a week, is we have a coffee break. And we just, we chat. It's water cooler conversation. We get our beverage of choice and hang out and find out. And because our folks are spread out now, not just around the city, but outside the country, it's kind of fun. Oh, what's happening in Ireland? What's happening in Copenhagen? And so we sort of get today in international news, plus just hearing what's happening in people's lives.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for joining us for this month's episode of Outgrow's Marketer of the Month. That was Drew Neisser, who is the founder and CEO of Renegade, the savvy B2B marketing agency that's helping CMOs cut through since 1996. Thanks for joining us, Drew.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for doing this show. It's great.
Check out the website for more details, and we'll see you once again next month with another Marketer of the Month.